Hi guys, Olive here today to bring you the next video in my ongoing series about the 90s PBS Kids TV show, Wishbone. This was a show that combined two different storylines, one of a family living in Texas with their pet Jack Russell Terrier, Wishbone, and another drew from works of classical literature. Each episode of the show seized upon the central theme of the chosen classic and used that to deliver a moral message to the very young audience. In this series of videos here on my channel, I look back at one episode of Wishbone and the work of literature that it highlights. I look at what scenes they chose to include versus what they left out. I determine whether or not it was a successful translation of the classic, and most importantly, I'm looking to see whether or not it makes for an entertaining half hour of television. So without any further ado, let's do this. What's the story, Wishbone? What's the story, Wishbone? Today we'll be focusing on an episode that comes pretty late in season 1 called Shakespeare, that takes on what is thought to be one of William Shakespeare's last plays, The Tempest. This episode is a little bit unusual because the real-life storyline isn't just tied to the classic, it's directly involved with it. When the episode opens, our Texan students are getting ready for a stage production of The Tempest. A little bit lofty for kids, but okay. David, a close friend of Wishbone's human Joe, is directing the play with a lot of other familiar faces involved in one way or another. That is, everyone except Wishbone, who is dying for a role. And so Wishbone begins to tell us the tale of the Tempest and sucks us into the secondary storyline where another surprise awaits. As the wizard Prospero begins to kick up the famous storm that will see his enemies wash ashore on the island on which he and his daughter Miranda are imprisoned, we realize that Wishbone isn't playing Prospero? Normally the dog always takes the lead role, but this episode seems to be upside down in every way. Wishbone instead takes the role of the mischievous but obedient sprite Ariel. Pretty fitting for a Jack Russell Terrier, I'd say. Plus, he looks adorable in the costume they give him. Promised his freedom in exchange for his help, Ariel gets to work on putting Prospero's plan of revenge and redemption into action. Prospero's enemies wash up on different parts of the beach, leading the King of Naples to believe that his beloved son, Ferdinand, has been killed in the crash, when really, he's alive and has been discovered by the innocent Miranda, and the two begin to make eyes at each other immediately. All according to Prospero's plan. Meanwhile, as the kids are getting ready for the stage production, the young woman casted as Ariel is not pleased with anything about her role, especially the costume. She would much rather be playing Miranda and thinks that she deserves it more since the other young woman playing Miranda is constantly forgetting her lines. She's not doing a very good job. Eventually, the young lady playing Ariel gets so frustrated that she rage quits and storms off. Both plot lines are quickly and amicably resolved. Ferdinand is reunited with his father, and the king is so relieved to see his son that he hardly bats an eye when he realizes that Miranda's going to be his daughter-in-law. Prospero stays true to his word and releases Ariel, and also decides to shake off the vendetta against his traitorous brother and the rest of the company. And then in the real-life storyline, the actress playing Ariel returns after being convinced of the value of her role, and the kids go on to put on quite the impressive show. So what choices did the writers make when taking on something as ambitious as a Shakespeare play on a kids' TV show? Well, it seems as though they definitely wanted to highlight the role of Ariel, seeing as Wishbone normally has the most important role in all of the classic segments, and they gave that role to him this time, and the role was the main source of contention in the real-life storyline. It also seems as though they wanted to show character growth in both of the storylines, since this is a very important aspect of the play. Sometimes passionate emotions can cause us to act impulsively, but it is never too late to go back and do the right thing. They also seem to be commenting on coveting what someone else has. So the kids were disputing a role. Meanwhile, it was Prospero's brother who schemed behind his back in order to push him out and become the Duke of Milan himself. I think this is a theme that will really resonate with kids, especially at this age. You are constantly comparing yourself to others as you're in the process of determining your own personhood. And this can sometimes cloud your vision and make you feel overly envious of what other people have. But honestly, beyond the messages of changing one's mind and wanting what someone else has, there's not much more meat to this episode. So much effort was put into the visual effects of the literary sections and bringing the play to life on stage that it doesn't seem like there was time for much else. Plus, Shakespeare is a big ask for kids. They did do their best to make the language accessible, but they didn't do much in the way of translating it into everyday language. Hence why I think they went so heavy on the visual effects, to use that to help them make it understandable for the audience. So I think their main point with this one wasn't necessarily to communicate a moral message like they try to do in other episodes. I personally think they were trying to take some of the intimidation factor out of Shakespeare, which also explains why huge portions of the play were completely left out. The island monster Caliban, nowhere to be found, and neither are the drunk foils Trinculo and Stefano. Nor do we see Antonio and Sebastian scheming against the king right behind his back. I know realistically they could have never included these things, but the play feels gutted without them. So while I was impressed with certain elements of the episode, and I can certainly tip my hat to their gumption for taking on something like Shakespeare, I didn't think this episode was as effective as other episodes I've seen previously. I'll be really interested to see how the show takes on other Shakespeare plays like Romeo and Juliet, ones that are better known, so they don't have to spend quite as much time explaining to the audience what it's all about. But that was my take on this episode of Wishbone. If you have any comments or questions about anything you've seen in this video or anything in general, please feel free to put that in the comment section below. Or if you'd prefer to chat with me somewhere other than YouTube, I am on a variety of different places on social media, and the links to all of my profiles are linked in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.
Funding for Wishbone provided by annual financial support from PBS viewers like you.